Greetings, travelers. I'm Josh.
And I'm Cutty.
And we're the Genshin Guys. Welcome all. This podcast is for fans of Genshin Impact, the mobile game made by Hoyoverse, also known as MiHoYo. Here we talk about our opinions, experiences, and dreams about Genshin Impact. If you like our show, don't forget to subscribe on Apple Music, Spotify, or wherever you're listening to the podcast. So everyone, today we are doing our first Interlude episode. This episode will be pre-recorded ahead of time in order to get ahead of any downtime that Kahi and I may have in our schedules so that we can still make our weekly Monday release schedule. For example, I'm on vacation right now, so we won't be able to bring you up-to-date news or our usual Weeks in Genshin segment or the answers to our current community questions. But in terms of community question, you'll have more time to answer, so hopefully it'll be a more lively discussion. As always, you can reach out to us still and follow us on our joint account on Twitter at Genshin Guys Pod or our individual accounts, which will be in the description. We appreciate you all and hope you enjoy the episode. So before we get started, Kahi, how are you doing today?
Doing rather well. I'm loving this cooler weather. Light rain, light drizzles here and there, but it's allowing me to keep the windows closed for the podcast recording to be less noisy. But it's cool enough where I don't have to worry about, getting feeling like I'm in a sauna, but it's actually really good. I had a lot to do today in as far as games go, still doing my Destiny 2 grind. And I am still going back and forth between these two big games, but I'm still trying to see if I can squeeze in a little bit of time for maybe some other stuff, maybe, because I wanted to try and do another single player game, maybe at some point just download the first Assassin's Creed just to keep it into my library to hop into every now and then when I'm bored, because it's still it helps keep things fresh instead of just only no-lifing 2 games. I would probably just do that later on. But what about you, Josh? How are you today?
Yeah, I'm doing great. Just really excited to I'm playing Persona 5 Royal on Switch and Pokemon as well, trying to get further in that. And still playing Marvel Snap, so that's good. By the way, in regards to Assassin's Creed, I've had it on my I have on PlayStation, and it's I also bought it when it was on discount, but then some of the newer ones I didn't buy, like Odyssey and stuff like that. I think they're on the the PlayStation, I have the upgraded premium whatever service or whatever, so I can download that game and play it whenever, all the games. So I didn't finish any Assassin's Creeds past Black Flag, which is the 4th one. Canonically, not there's 3 Assassin's Creed 2s, and then there's Assassin's Creed 3, and then there's Assassin's Creed 4, which is the pirate one, which is Black Flag. And then after that, I didn't play any of the other ones. I didn't play Unity, the one in France, or the one in Egypt, or the one in Greece. But I want to play the Egypt one, Origins, and then I want to play the other one, Odyssey, which I heard were both. I heard Odyssey is really good, but I want to play the Egypt one because I love Egyptian culture. So yeah, I'm excited about story games too, trying to find some time. But man, Genshin is so much. Like I said, I haven't finished a lot of the side quests still. So I kind of want to get to a point where I feel like I've done all the story content Genshin has to offer me currently before I move on. So I'm slowly working on that, but I'm also working on raising my American account so I can play with you. So we'll see. We'll see how that goes. Okay, but yeah, that's where I'm at.
We'll see how it goes.
Yeah. So today we only have 2 topics that we would like to talk about, which are our lore learn along. We're gonna be talking about Delusions today, and we're gonna be talking about Gnosticism, a study that is supposedly the inspiration and draws a lot of parallels with Genshin's story itself. So we're going to talk about that today. Hopefully you enjoy lots of lore talk and just general information and our opinions and our understandings of the lore of Genshin. And hopefully you enjoy. So let's get started. So first, let's talk about our lore learn along. Now, I'm going to be, in a lore learn along, if you haven't already listened to one of our lore learn along episodes, I'm going to be basically reading the Genshin-Impact.fandom wiki and be going through some of the terms that are there, and we're going to be learning together as we go forward. Okay, so even though we may have pre-existing knowledge on these subjects, we are looking at the wiki because this is a very, very um, very, very well kept archive of different things in the game and compiled into a very easy to read and understand article with all the sources coming from things like the in-game books, coming from NPC voice lines, coming from extra things outside of the game, like with the manga, etc., etc. So, we're gonna be hopefully bringing you some information about things in the game that maybe the game doesn't itself doesn't explain up front in the story as much, but is in the game somewhere. So we're gonna talk about this, and maybe it'll inspire you to do a little bit of your own research or to look at different things in the game that maybe you haven't looked at before. So let's get started talking about delusions. Okay, so delusions are powerful, vision like objects produced by the Fatui. Their production method and the number in circulation is unknown, but it appears to utilize the remains of deceased gods and other powerful beings. Like visions, delusions grant their wielders the ability to manipulate certain elements, but are supposedly far more powerful than visions in exchange for draining the user's vitality or backfiring on them. Knowledge about delusions is scarce, and it is a closely guarded secret even among the Fatui. According to the Fatui member Victor, few members beyond the 11 Fatui Harbingers possess one, and they are personally granted by the Tsaritsa herself. In recent years, the Fatui agents have been secretly distributing mass-produced delusions amongst commoners of the Seven Nations. All right, Kahi, you have anything to say about that?
So delusions, they've been in production for kind of a long time, or was it during our story, during our like?
We don't
Was it
know.
before we came to Mondstadt? No.
We don't
Oh, so
know.
we don't know like how long
I'm
it's been going on. Okay.
maybe it will we will get to that point, but it just says that delusions use the remains of ancient gods and other powerful entities. So, you know, I'm assuming that way back when those ancient gods and entities were alive, you couldn't use those pieces, but maybe it's a more recent thing.
Okay. Because delusions, for them to be using that kind of material, I would assume like, were they doing it back then when the materials were already fresh, or like when someone found it after this whole time? So yeah, I don't know like how long this plot has been going on. Maybe one of those ancient people were already doing it, and then it was just kind of like a secret society ever since then, or us and like the modern humans found it, repurposed it. So that's what that was going on through my head.
Okay, well, let's see if any of those questions are answered. So, on the overview, based on current knowledge, delusions utilize the remains of ancient gods and other powerful entities. The delusions produced at Yashiori Island's Delusion Factory used crystal marrow, which contains the Tatarigami curse originating from the slain god Orobashi. The delusion used by Krapus and Diluc in the manga, by the way, Krapus is Diluc's father and Kaya's adopted father, was created alongside Barnabas's experiment on directly injecting Archon residue, the remains of ancient gods, into human subjects like Kole. So Barnabas was that Sumeru Fatui, like he looks like sort of a doctor. He wears like a turban and he has like a mustache, dark skin, yellow eyes, and like cat-like yellow eyes. And he is a subordinate of Dottore. So in the manga, there's a whole story about the background of Kaya, Diluc's father, and Kole and Dottore, and this guy Barnabas. So definitely, if you're interested. Oh, also the history of Mondstadt is talked about there as well with Ursa the Drake, the dragon that attacks Mondstadt. All of those are involved and gone into detail in the manga. So, so what we talked about here is the delusion used by Kravis and Diluc, and the delusions mass produced at Yashiori Island using the remains of the curse from the slain god Orobashi, who I believe is the god that is like a giant snake that A defeated with like one giant slash and like cut the whole island or whatever. So, any comments?
Mm, It's starting to sound like the manga is even more important to know about nowadays. So I might have to start reading it. But man, that is still
On the
a
mangas,
lot of background
it's
stuff.
like a one shot story. Like it's not like keep
One shot
it's
story.
yeah it's
Mm.
like one story. It's not uh an ongoing manga as far as I understand.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so
Hmm.
you just read that one story, and
I
it's
might
all in
have to look
color
into
too,
it though.
by the way.
It is nicer than words.
Yeah. So okay, so let's see. A delusion's abilities seem to depend on the type used. Ones used by the Fatui largely contain elemental powers and allow their users some degree of elemental manipulation abilities. The Archon residue imbued in Kole and Krapus and Diluc's delusion is considered having a neutral element, despite manifesting as black fire, as their effects do not resemble that of any known element. During the investigation into the black fire incident she caused, Kole's fire was described as having a great hunger for anything living, and people who touched it were devoured, and all that was left of them were charred remains. So, the Knights of Favonius conducted some research on delusions following the incident resulting in Krapus's death, although their documents on them were partially destroyed by the fire. The little information Jean, Lisa, and Amber could salvage from the tattered documents revealed that the delusions emit the smell of mist grass upon use. So, so this is a really interesting thing. Is they said that the delusions considered having the one that the Archon residue imbued in Kale and Krapus and Deluxe delusion is considered neutral because it manifested as black fire and that doesn't go with any known element. But it could be a possible hint at an element in the future. Because
I have a feeling it is.
yeah, because like if you think about like the Honkai world and things like that as well, there is there's more than just the main elements, and they added elements, and I
Hmm.
think it's very possible for them. I think at some point we have to add elements, right? Like I think we'll get to a point where we have so many characters of the same elements, it'll be a lot of the same, and then we'll need something to shake things up, and we'll see. Maybe they'll give us a uh, new element, and maybe this Blackfire will be part of that. So, side effects. Here we go. Side effects. Delusions are extremely powerful, but potentially equally dangerous for their user. Krapus was either killed by using one, or left in such agony that Diluc chose to take his life to spare him the suffering. So this was implied. Like we don't know 100% because Kaya asked him, and Diluc was never upfront about it. But it was implied that Krapus died and Diluc was there. Some members of the Watatsumi army who used delusions suffered from rapid aging as a result of their vitality being drained, with some like Teppei dying from its effects. Right, so we know Teppei from the story, who was given a delusion by the Fatui, and he used it to gain power, but it actually ended up killing him. And the traveler, as the first time traveler, kind of just saw someone die in front of him because of what was happening with the Fatui, and made them really enraged. And so yeah, that's unfortunate, but it shows like the dangers of normal people using the delusion. So the side effects of delusion usage seem to vary from person to person. Krapus and Teppei died relatively shortly after taking up the delusion, while Diluc used Krapus' delusion for 3 years without any obvious consequences. The delusion users among the resistance were unequally affected, but there is too little information to draw any conclusion on why that was so. Too little is known about Fatui personnel to tell whether they suffer from the same delusion side effects as non-Fatui users. Neither Child nor Signora have displayed any physical drawbacks from using their delusions, although neither are ordinary humans, and so there are many potential reasons as to why. Child has only been seen suffering the repercussions of using his delusion in conjunction with the Abyss technique Foul Legacy Transformation. He has not been shown using his delusion alone, and he typically defaults to his vision's abilities if the fight does not call for more extreme measures. Signora's delusion is explicitly different from most other delusions, as she had previously transformed her body with the art of living flame, and her cryo delusion, created with the Saritsa's grace, quote unquote, prevents it from consuming and killing her. It has been suggested that Signora's delusion was warped her already unstable mind. Signora's memories of her past were suppressed upon gaining her delusion, and the delusion Piero gave her, the quote unquote delusion Piero gave her when he did so, convinced her to join the Fatui. Okay. Any
Okay,
comment?
so okay, so since we're talking about Senora, so I read something a little while ago. So Senora was at some point the Witch of Flames, right? Because she doesn't like being called that because that's what she used to be before Piero and the Saritsa found her and took her in.
Right.
Does that sound familiar? I know. Okay, so Senora was originally Pyro, and her delusion gave her Cryo, or was it the other way
She's
around?
originally Pyro, and her delusion gave her
Okay,
Cryo. And the Pyro was like actually like almost too much for her to handle, and so the Syriza gave her the Cryo delusion, to suppress her Pyro powers.
okay, because like Child, he's normally Hydro, and then when he uses his delusion, he now has Electro.
Yeah.
So it's the ability to use multiple things. Okay.
So in the boss fight, it's actually the
Um.
opposite, huh? Like Child, you start out with him using his vision, and then he uses
Mhm.
his delusion for more power, and Senora does the opposite because her cryo vision actually
Right.
suppresses her true power.
So in this particular case, it's it's kind of like Shoto Todoroki because he uses cryo most of the time, but his
From My Hero
heat
Academia, right?
side, yeah, for my hero, yes, it allows him to keep his you know
His
flame power
in
cooled
check. Right,
off
right, right.
to keep in check. So it's kind of like what's going on with Senora. That's what it sounds like
Yeah, it's kind of like
because
that.
she can stay in cryo because her normal pyro ability would kind of like it's how she keeps like a balance.
Yeah, and it sounds
She's
like
using it
that
to just keep
she
her.
was
Yeah.
manipulated after that too, because her cryo delusion also does something to mess with her mind, which her mind seems like
Mm.
it's unstable. Uh, okay, since we're talking about Senora, let me just read her quick story before she
Mm-hmm.
joined the Fatui. It's pretty short. So, her origins are unknown, but she lived in Mondstadt roughly 500 years ago. As a maiden, she loved to sing and eventually fell in love with Rostam. Rostam is a knight of Favonius, okay? Famed as the Wolf Pup. He developed Favonius bladework, the Knights of Favonius sword style, which is still practiced to this day. He was a close friend of the rival of the Grandmaster of the time. Um, and yeah, so yeah. Anyway, so she was like in love with this guy. She was accepted into Sumeru Academia, and shortly before she left for her studies, Rostam gave her a special hydro timepiece to keep track of the amount of time that she would be away. And I think this hydro timepiece, I don't know, some Rostam has to do with one of the like artifact sets in the game and stuff. But anyway, so Rostam gives her this timepiece, and she was likely an apprentice studying pyromagic, though what means she used to harness pyro is unknown. The cataclysm struck while she was in Sumeru. When she returned, she learned that Rostam had died in battle against the monsters. In her grief and rage, she decided to use her quote unquote her life's flame to cleanse quote unquote the world's crookedness, becoming the Crimson Witch of Flame. She was rumored to have abandoned her
Mm-hmm.
mortal body and let liquid fire flow through herself with an art that is now lost to history, burning her own face and scarring her body in the process. Although she only burned monsters and demons, she became feared by the people. And then the quick recruitment into the Fatui section. Before she could be fully devoured by her own flames, Piero found her and decided to make her an ally. She was given a cryo delusion to suppress her flames and became known as La Signora, the eighth of the 11 Fatui harbingers. In the process, she willingly cast aside and forgot her past, possibly with the help of her delusion. So it seems like she might have been on the way to dying anyway. like, uh,
Sounds like it.
yeah, like despite everyone's like, oh my god, she died and all this stuff, but like she might have always been on the path to dying. Like it was already a sad thing. So I'm curious if we'll ever hear more about her story, and the background, like as the more we unveil about the past.
Well, her what is it? Her tomb is still a place that the Harbingers visited.
Yeah, we might see it
It's in
in
Snezhnaya. We
Snezhnaya.
might go there. It's frozen in time. And I don't know if this was just purely symbolic or anything, but one of her little um pyro or ember butterflies when it sets down right on the tomb just burns away.
Right.
maybe she's still alive somehow. Maybe she can come back later on.
Oh, I
That'd
don't
be
know if
awesome.
I told you about this, but I think that Senora, there's a chance that Senora's character model, I guess I could say, would come back as a different character from like an alternate dimension, because like that's an alternate universe, because that is what Honkai is like. Like for characters that you think are dead, you'll see them in some alternate universe. And so if we ever get to that point in the future where universes start crashing into each other, the skies of Tevat are fake and all this stuff, we might see Senora in a different capacity, right? She might be like a good guy. She might be a totally different person in general, but like it might be her in a different way. I think that that's possible. I think she's dead. I think the one in Teva is dead. Like that's what I think,
Hmm.
but we'll see.
I remember having a theory that when she was like very frantic about Red and Shogun approaching her, my idea was like she she knows that she can come back, but it's just incredibly inconvenient to do so. So I thought like if she ever was to like get killed in her current form, in her witch form, she would come back, but she would come back as like the chibi version,
Oh my
because now
gosh.
she has to get her power back.
Oh my.
So
What
she's
is
gonna be in
this?
a
Is
super weak state
is she
for
gonna be
so
the
long.
lesser Lord Senora? Yeah. So, well,
That'd be funny
so much
though.
speculation. I just think like yeah, I really do think that her character and even her story was super cool. She comes in as like this really like um bossy bad guy looking character who looks really cool and really evil and has the Fatui guards with her. Then she just kind of walks up to Venti and pushes you away, and then Venti like she makes like a passing thing like about, or she says something like we're here to take your gnosis, and he's like no, and then she just like basically takes it from him, and then she leaves, and she's like a really bad guy, and then you go to you that's the first your first encounter with like the real Fatui and the Harbingers, and then you go to Liyue and you are accused of killing Rex Labis for like no reason, and then while you're running away from the guards, Child comes and saves you, and then you say to Child like, "Oh my God, you're one of the Fatui, just like Senora," and he's like, "Oh yeah, like I heard about that, like." Yeah, I don't even approve of some of the stuff that she does. Like he's like she's like pretty evil. Like he basically gives like this vibe like I mean, I'm not that evil. Like so it was really interesting to hear like that even within the Fatui, like that's the earliest time you hear that even within the Fatui they have different ideals. Like Child is like I don't approve of some of what Senora does, and like even though Senora was doing what she's doing for the sake of the Saritsa, which supposedly Child has the same goals, right? So that all happens. We don't actually learn about her story in any sort of real story capacity. Like in the story, like in the Archon quests, etc., we don't learn about her story. Like you have to imply it through, and learn it through like the Crimson Witch of Flames artifact set, maybe what NPCs say, maybe in the books in the game, like the lore stuff. But her story is actually like really sad. Like the thing I just read you, right? Her background. Like we don't know that unless you look it up and go out of your way to look it up. And I think
Hmm.
there's so
It's like
much
in a
potential.
item description.
Yeah, there's so much potential like in Senora as a character that I really hope that they don't just end it there. But who knows? They could be pulling like a Game of Thrones esque thing where they just like kill off main characters really fast, even though you think that the story's gonna be about them. They just die. Like that's what Game of Thrones is known for. So yeah. So
All right.
anyway, so let's move on to the next part. So we talked about the side effects. Now next we're gonna talk about the types of delusions. So here we have more about Krapus's delusion. So in the manga, delusion in Krapus's possession takes the form of a red orb fitted onto a left-handed glove with a ring on the middle finger. This symbol inside the orb is not an elemental symbol or the Fatui emblem, but is instead a large circle with another small circle towards the bottom. When activated, it forms barbed chains that sprout out from the palm of the glove, allowing them to grapple even large and powerful creatures like Ursa the Drake. These chains can also be conjured from magic circles, allowing more chains to be produced at once. These chains can optionally be surrounded by black fire, which is seen when Kravis used it to fight Ursa the Drake. When Diluc uses it to apprehend Krupp, Krupp, who's that again? Is that the guy who the someone working for the Fatui, one of Dottoro's adjutants, and a character in the manga.
This delusion is in, would you say, a glove?
Yes, so
Okay.
maybe this
Not
one,
just dangling.
Diluc fought Krupp with the delusion, and then Dottore showed up right before Diluc was able to interrogate him about Dottore's plans, and Dottore just kills Krupp and then transforms his corpse into a robot. And then uses the robot to fight.
Interesting.
So that's interesting. So yeah, but you see Diluc using this delusion when fighting Krupp, and yeah, he can make black fire out of the chains. So that's pretty interesting. I wonder if there's some kind of implication with his current costume. Diluc's current costume with the darker flames. Anyway, so we have that's Krapus's delusion. Then we have mass-produced delusions. So the mass-produced delusion confiscated by Goro is a round glass orb with the Fatui insignia inlaid in it, encased in a jagged-edged frame. When Goro displays it, the orb appears black while the Fatui emblem takes on a light gray color. Because no member of the Watatsumi army is seen using a delusion's power on screen, it is currently impossible to discern how their delusion's abilities manifested. Teppei, who used a mass-produced delusion and never received a vision, guessed that using a vision would be similar. The delusions used by agents, Sissin mages, and mirror maidens is visually identical to those distributed in the Watatsumi army, although their orbs are colored based on their elemental abilities that they bestow. Child's vision, and by extension his electro delusion, uses the same casing as mass-produced delusions, although the true form of his delusion has been obfuscated. Okay. And they're going to explain that here. So, Child's delusion appears to change forms, making it difficult to discern its true appearance. Piero pinned it on him when he became a Harbinger, but Child's regular character model has nothing that looks like his electro delusion. Instead, his Hydro vision is held in the same casing used to encase mass-produced delusions. When Child enters the delusion unleashed phase of Enter the Golden House, the boss fight with Child, the Hydro vision on his belt appears to be supplanted by his electro delusion. The orb turns electro-purple and bears the Fatui symbol instead of the Hydro symbol. His clothing also changes color, although it is unclear whether that is directly related to his delusion or not. In his Foul Legacy phase, his vision and delusion change places again, and he is capable of wielding both elements at the same time. The positions of his vision and the badge along his right shoulder swap places. His vision, bearing the Hydra symbol once again, can be seen on his shoulder, while the badge, which had no elemental color or symbol up until this point, moves down to his belt and bears the Fatui emblem with electro-purple colors. Interesting. I never realized how his vision jumps around like that.
I didn't know it had that many visual changes. I guess I don't do frame by frames.
Yeah, I think they're really people are really studying this because this is one of the prime examples of someone using a delusion that we have, right? So, and then last...
I mean, it would make sense that the weapons change because, Child goes into a spear. He doesn't even have a spear.
Right.
He's a bow and a knife wielder. And then Senora goes from catalyst to whip. I mean, so it makes sense because you're adding a whole extra set of attacks, features, and elements.
Right. And then let's see, Senora's delusion. So the appearance of Senora's delusion is unconfirmed, and she does not wear anything resembling an orb-type delusion. Hers is also unique in that her delusion was bestowed to suppress her flame-based power rather than amplify it. Based on her animations during the Narukami Island Tenshukaku fight, the catalyst-like objects that float around her is probably her delusion. At the start of battle, she uses it to activate the cryo snowflake-like field under her feet, within which she could create icy blades while surrounded by a barrier. While preparing her transformation, she dispels the barrier and briefly remanifests the catalyst above her head before immediately using it to encase herself in an ice cocoon. After completing her transformation into her Crimson Witch of Embers phase, the catalyst cannot be seen on her, but it returns after she is defeated and she returns to her normal appearance. So, the known users of visions overall are in the Harbingers. We know about Tartaglia has an electro delusion. Senora has a cryo delusion. The Fatui CC mages there are electro and cryo CC mages that use electro and cryo delusions. The pyro agents use pyro delusions, and mirror maidens use hydro delusions. Other people are Krapus, who is Diluc's father, who is deceased, Diluc formerly, Tepe, who is deceased, other members of the Watatsumi army, formerly, some are deceased, um, Ludochka Snezhevna formerly used it. So this person is a Fatui spy. Oh, an NPC who left the
Chasm?
Fatui. No, an NPC who left the Fatui
No.
and can be found working as Gendo Ringo in Grand Narukami Shrine after completing day one of the objective of Gendo Ringo's Strange Fortune Slips.
Wait, I
Interesting.
think I remember that person.
Yeah, if you see a
Yeah,
picture of
because there
her,
is someone that doesn't. They have a weird name, and
yeah.
they didn't. Oh wait, yeah. I mean, wow.
Are you looking at it?
She's the delusion. No, I remember there being someone at the shrine that had like a weird name.
So check this out. Do you see this?
What in the
Dude,
world? Yeah.
dude, she was an orphan raised in the House of the Hearth, the orphanage run by Arlecchino.
Arlecchino. Anytime you say orphanage, I'm like, oh, that's
Yeah.
Arlecchino.
Due to her, oh yeah,
Wow.
Arlecchino, yeah, that makes sense. Due to her Inazuman heritage, Ludochka studied Inazuman matters from a young age. She was friends with Katarina Snezhevna, who describes her as being closer than a real sister. Efim Snezevich also had some shared history with her, which is why she showed her favor compared to other agents from the House of the Hearth who were assigned to Inazuma. As after the original Gendo Ringo, Momoyo faked her death after the Traveler and Paimon took on the strange fortune slips, which Momoyo had intended to use to lure out the Fatui. Ludochka was assigned to replace Momoyo as Gendo Ringo and tasked with gaining the trust of the two supposed Shu Matsuban members to infiltrate the organization, the Traveler and Paimon. Despite her efforts in the role, Yaimiko was already aware that she was an imposter, although she did not confront her over it. Oh my god, I totally forgot about this storyline. Realizing that her task was impossible to complete, she had begun to like life in Inazuma, and she unsuccessfully tried to stall and eventually received her final instructions from her teacher, and Efim Snezovic. Efim had begun to get fed up with her stalling, further agitated after fellow spy Taya informed that she had found a light novel in her purse. The traveler, seeing that Ladochka genuinely regretted her actions and did not want the plan to succeed, came up with a plan with Momoyo to fake her death so Efim would not pursue her for her failure. Afterwards, she initially wanted to leave Inazuma out of guilt, but was convinced by the traveler and Paimon to stay in Inazuma and adopt the Gendo Ringo identity for good. Wow, what a cool NPC! I forgot about this NPC.
Okay, the other NPC that I know of, the one that I thought you were talking about, was the one that we found in the chasm. The one where she like her group was like,
Oh yeah.
scattered about, and you were looking for her brother, I think, her brother or
Hmm.
her lover.
I don't remember. It
I'm
wasn't
okay.
just a
You know what? I'm
teammate,
pretty sure it was her lover. No, because she was specifically looking for this one guy,
right?
and then we brought back something that was from like a cave in, and it was like his, and he's like,
Yeah.
oh man, it was kind of sad because you had to leave her there, but you could still kind of keep going. I wonder if she's still there.
I mean, we could check.
I maybe, yeah, I'd have to find her again because it's like a weird off, literally a hole in the wall. So
By the way, this is her
I'd
in
probably
her
have to find it.
Inazuma outfit.
Oh yeah, I saw.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So cool. So there's this. There's this. She used to use a delusion, apparently, is what it says. So let's see. No. Oh, because she's a Fatui Electrosystem mage. That's why. Interesting. Okay. So anyway, so she used to use a delusion, and Tae, who is the other Taya and Katarina, who are the other people, like Pyro Agent, and Katarina, I think, is a Mirror Mage, a Mirror Maiden. No, Katarina is also a Sissy Mage. Right. Electro Sissy Mage. Okay, interesting. So yeah, so we know that's funny because they're just named NPCs of those enemies, basically. So now the last two parts of the Delusions page, which is the story from the manga. So the quick version is, I mean, I guess this is the manga summary. But it's 3 years before the events of the manga. Krapus's Delux's father, Krapus, Deluc's father, obtained a delusion. While the exact circumstances behind it and how he obtained it is unclear, it seems to have been part of an overarching plot by Dottore subordinates, which may include Krupp and Barnabas. Krapus planned on gifting to Deluc on his 18th birthday, but with Deluc's preternatural skills, Krapus deemed it unnecessary. When the Fatui learned Ursa the Drake, when the Fatui lured Ursa the Drake to attack them on their way back to the Dawn Winery, Krapus wielded it to save Deluc, but its power backfired and left him in incredible agony. In the manga, Krapus disintegrates and disappears. However, Kaya's character story says Deluc put Krapus out of his misery by killing him. It is unknown which rendition is the truth. Isn't that interesting?
So their own lore has conflicts.
Yeah, but remember, like, so in the manga we see it happen, supposedly, but in Kaya's story,
Mm-hmm.
Deluc says, he says that Deluc put Krapus out of his misery. So I don't know if Kaya was there when the attack happened, but if he wasn't, then maybe Deluc told Kaya that that's what happened, that he had to kill him. So maybe he is
So that would
holding
make
it from Kaya.
sense. So yeah, here's the thing about lore, because you have the source can also be part of the story. So let's say you have an item, and the item tells a story, but then you found out that hey, someone manufactured that item. Okay, now you know that story was something that the person who made it wanted you to know. You see how that changes the context? So it's not like everything is set in stone. So like, depending on the source of this, either Kaya knows a real story and what we are reading is okay. So in the manga, you're seeing it, but then if people are recalling a different version, it's because they were lied to. So now the I guess the motivations of the other person or just what they're trying to accomplish. Because to the audience, if you see something that is portrayed in front of you, and that has to be truth, that has to be real. Everything else is just a recollection or just some kind of official story released to the public in that sense, in that universe. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, there's always that potential, like where we read the lore from, like a paper document item might actually be written, might be plagiarized, it might be counterfeit. So, this does give every piece of lore a little bit more context to look into, because I'm sure the people who are building this wiki know what they're doing, but now we can probably start to question a little bit about what is the real story going on, especially because we have several versions of it. So this is interesting. I mean, Delusions is kind of based around the idea of false knowledge.
Right, exactly. It's not too dissimilar from like those knowledge capsule, the divine knowledge.
Oh man, when I talk about Gnosticism, you're gonna love what I found.
All right, cool. Yeah. So let me wrap up the delusion stuff here, because I want to
I can't wait to draw the parallels.
Okay, so Deluc ended up taking the delusion for himself, departed from Mondstadt to search for the delusion's origins. He eventually traced it back to the Fatui and likely used the delusion to fight them during his 3-year journey across Teyvat, which I think is when he was wearing his costume, right? For reasons not fully known, delusion never backfired on Deluc, and it may be because Deluc was a vision bearer while Krapus was not. Kaya also learned about the delusion, and although he wouldn't be made aware of its origins until investigating the Blackfire incident. Upon Deluc's return to Mondstadt, he used it to ambush Krupp during the party at the Dawn Winery. Dottore silenced Krupp using an unknown weapon, but decided not to make the incident public after taking an interest in Deluc's delusion, which he calls a quote-unquote vision. He was likely unaware of the delusion's nature, given his general apathy toward his subordinates' actions until they provide results that pique his interest. Now, following the Blackfire incident, the discovery of the link between the delusion and Kalle's Archon residue powers, Deluc and Kaya concocted a plan to derail the Fatui's plans. Taking advantage of the shared origins between the delusion and Kalle's Blackfire, Deluc posed as the perpetrator of the incident to lure the Fatui guards away from Kalle, the actual perpetrator. While Barnabas was not fooled and quickly caught up with Amber and Kalle, Deluc arrived late into the fight and pinned him down with the delusion's powers as Amber delivered the incapacitating blow. Before losing consciousness, Barnabas expressed his surprise upon seeing that Deluc was wielding the delusion. Kaya and the Fatui guards arrived on scene and captured Deluc to bring him back to Dottore. However, Deluc escaped and sent to Tori the broken delusion, much to the Harbinger's consternation. So that's like a quick summary of the manga. I definitely want to read that, like the full thing, but very, very interesting. Now, in game, when Senora attacks Venti and the Traveler, she creates a blizzard capable of instantly freezing Venti's legs. This is shown later to originate from a cryo delusion given to her to suppress her power abilities as Crimson Witch of Flames. She would continue using it during the boss fight, the duel before the throne. During the Golden House battle, Child uses his delusion. His delusion's element is electro, indicating delusions are not bound to user's vision element. Right. While investigating the claims of accelerated aging among soldiers of the resistance, Goro manages to seize the secret weapon they were using and shows it to the Traveler, who immediately recognizes it as a delusion. And they're just explaining again here that due to Sakoku decree, the Fatui had been making delusions in Inazuma by utilizing crystal marrow supplied by the Kanjo Commission. The factory is later raided and razed by the resistance. So, interesting. The I like the way that they say it. So it's as part of the trivia, like, so the Chinese name, and I guess in extension, the Japanese name is probably similar, but in Japanese and Chinese, like visions are known as like eyes of God, right? Like kami no me, and the delusions is like the evil eye, like the eye of evil, is what they're called. And similarly, in English, the term vision can be used
Interesting.
for both
Okay.
literally the ability to see, as well as the experience of a divine or otherwise supernatural appearance. That's like the term vision. A delusion, meanwhile, is a false belief that is propagated even in the face of facts, or even in the state of being deluded. So yeah, I think they picked really good names, like localization for vision and delusion. I think they're cool names.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, so that's our little lore learn along for delusions. It's like, it's really, I love these because it's kind of like a rabbit hole. You're like, wait, who's that? Wait, what are we talking about? Wait, who is this? And you can just click around and then just like, it's really fun to like learn about it together. So
Yeah. That's the thing about wikis. Like you have like if it brings up a proper noun, it's gonna have a link and you click on that. You go into a whole nother article about that. And you click on a whole nother article about that.
yeah, it's just nice
Everything's
because
interconnected.
all the information is compiled nicely and connected nicely together instead of having to like go through all of these things separately and read the stuff. So yeah, it's really cool. But okay, so that's our lore learn along delusions. You have any things to say before we move on to the Gnosticism study?
There's definitely a lot that ties into what I was researching, so
Oh,
I
great.
cannot wait to go over piece by piece.
Okay,
Because I
so
mean, there's a lot of references, a lot of names in the real world that we really don't need to know because that's just the author of this idea or the person who came up with this contradicting idea or I just went straight up with the ideas. So
okay.
yeah.
All right, so go for it. Please lead us in this study of Gnosticism.
All right. So the idea for this one came from user Ben at Invoker Mid Please. So Invoker Mid PLS. Currently listening to the Nahida Star episode. I've always found intentionality in the names in Genshin. If you want to push it farther, you should look into Gnosticism. Core idea is that the universe is fake and there's overseers called archons under a divine. And so this piqued my interest because if there's an actual like core inspiration for the entire story of Genshin, this really helps with creating a prediction engine or like a framework for thinking like, hey, if this is where Genshin's getting its inspiration from, what do we know of that inspiration and how does that tell us what's about to be added to the story? Or like how closely are these ideas linked and where does it draw inspiration from? Where does it diverge? So I did some light research. A lot of this comes from Britannica.com, basically Encyclopedia Britannica. And I was looking into it. And after maybe a couple of minutes of just reading, like, the summaries and like the core belief systems and everything, I thought, oh my God, this is it. So let me start off by going pieces by pieces. I'm not going to talk about the whole articles because I did have to kind of sift through a lot of it. So I'm just bringing up really important bits of the article about Gnosticism. So first of all, it's from the root Greek word gnostikoi. It is those who have gnosis or knowledge. So gnosis and knowledge are kind of synonymous. Now that is already pretty telling because the gnosis itself is what we call the thing that kind of gives the archons their main power. So now, especially after Sumeru, knowledge itself is power. It's being looked upon more as something that can enhance a person or to like give them abilities or like increase potential. Because all of those knowledge capsules that the academia is creating actually do have tangible effects. Like you remember like when you were you got that one capsule that was talking about combat prowess and everything,
Right, the one that
and your
raised your
attack
combat
actually,
by like point zero
yes,
zero 0.003% or something.
yep. And the thing is, it actually increased your base attack by 3. It has an actual effect.
Wait, really?
So, yeah, your base attack was, someone compared it with before and after. Your actual traveler's base attack number went up by 3 points.
That's so funny.
It's insignificant, but when you look into it, it makes sense. It's like a super small detail that just adds to like the realism of the world itself. But
Yeah.
just by that alone, I'm looking at visions and delusions in a lot more broader sense now. Not just so narrow-minded, like, hey, this is a thing, you have an element power, that's it. No, there's a lot more going on behind the scenes of why they're called visions, especially when you look at the different languages and their translations. Like evil eye, and then you have like the discerning eye or something.
Right.
Or what was it?
The
What was it
God's
called? The
God's
eye of
eye.
life.
God's eye.
God's eye, yeah, God's eye, and then evil eye. So you have a good eye, bad eye. There's a duality in that. Now, Gnosticism itself, the idea, it is a form of cognitive intellectual learning other than practical learning. Think of it like enhancing the learning ability to comprehend and perceive and infer rather than just accumulation of knowledge. So like gaining more knowledge will unlock your potential, will unlock more things you can do, will increase your ability or power. So that's kind of where all of this is coming from. A gnosis is literally that. Things that give the archons a power. 7 archons, 7 powers, 7, different branches of types of power. Now, moving on to Gnosticism, it's a very fragmented belief system because there's types of it. Like I'm sure there's all kinds of religions out there that have like their own sect or their own group or their own beliefs over here. These guys believe the same thing but a different way. So the common types basically boil down to an inferior creator of the world or a demiurge and a more transcendent god or order of being. 7 archons or angels that are above all except the 2 above those 7. So there's then a special class or race of humans that is descended from that transcendent realm and is destined to achieve salvation and to return to its spiritual origins and reawakens the knowledge through gnosis or the gnosis of the race's divine identity.
Mm.
This bit right here is basically outlining that yes, there are 7 archons. However, there are 2 above those archons, and then there's like a level of humanity below them that know about that, and then the humanity that doesn't. So, 2 main divines, 7 other ones, like a higher humanity and lesser humanity.
Mm-hmm.
Is any of this sounding familiar?
I mean, it's like what we're talking about. It's Genshin.
That's literally Genshin.
I mean, they even use like
Yes, this is
archons in the
sounding
same term and
more and
everything,
more.
right? Like, who uses the term
Mhm.
archons? Like,
Okay. Now, the one thing that caught me about this is that we know about the. Actually, no. The next one is where it kind of like flushes it out. So here's how all this begins. You know how I said there was like 7 archons, and then there's 2 above the archons.
mm-hmm.
2. So this begins with a primordial aeon or an eternal entity or age, and this is quotes, an unnameable god.
Oh, interesting.
Who do you think that is?
The unnamed god.
The unnamed god. That's the only one we know of from the beginning of the game, which now begs the question, is there another one out there?
right? I
There
mean,
would there
because
would I mean
there has to be,
have to
right?
be.
Because like that god from the beginning of the game is supposedly not directly related to
Hmm.
Tevat, right? Like supposedly.
Hmm. And if that is the unnameable, or the unnamed god, the unnameable god, there has to be the other one. So these two beings they are the ones that create the divine family of entities, each of which is a mythic personification of a divine faculty or attribute. For example, thought, foreknowledge, incorruptibility, eternal life, and so forth. I actually tried to find all the other faculties or divine attributes, but I can't really find it because Gnosticism is so fragmented that there's no like one cohesive like form of it. So they're probably just giving examples just to say like, yes, these are attributes of divine things. But from what we know now, when Nahida brings it up, is there are something called heavenly principles, incredibly similar to this. So the principles are most likely like what the archons represent on a divine level. Not so much like a elemental level, but it starts to make more sense when you think about what the elements themselves kind of display or what they represent. Wind is freedom. You have geo, which is contracts or um I guess how would you what's another way to say that?
For what?
Um Loyalty or something.
Oh,
Eternity for Electro, and wisdom and life for Dendro. You know what I'm talking about? So like
yeah, the
there's
themes.
the element itself and the theme behind the element. So that's exactly what this is going on about as well. This one now, what they mentioned, I thought was interesting because of how Sumeru is such a turning point in the story, because it's basically like creating a direct trajectory towards the biggest event in Genshin history,
Mm-hmm.
because everything before this was just exploring, these cultures and these worlds and these people. Now we're looking up. We're on an upward path now. We're looking outside our world from this perspective because now we know more. Now we know everything almost. We know more about what's going on a bigger scale. The scale of our like perspective, the scale of our focus goes up dramatically. So the next bit is the last in Gnosticism, the last divine entity to emerge is wisdom. Wisdom being the youngest of them, which is what? Rukkhadevata, which is the Dendro Archon, the youngest of the last one to emerge. Unlike the other entities, wisdom is said to be without a consort. Her attempt to find one, though well intentioned, leads her away from the supernatural or the supernal realm to lower regions, and she generates an inferior first ruler who then creates the material world. So the Dendro Archon was the only one to have like a greater form and a lesser form, even though those two were both the Archon.
Right.
Um, do you know if any of the other Archons had an Archon before them? Because I thought Raiden
They all
Shogun,
did.
A had a sister. They all had a previous one?
Yeah. So remember, like I mentioned
Mm-hmm.
before, that like the only so Venti and Zhongli are the only two to have been always the
The
same god.
originals.
Yeah, the original from the beginning,
Mm-hmm.
from the formation of the
Okay,
seven, they
right.
were always there. But then, because of the story and how it progressed with the Dendro Archon, the way history is now is that it was always Nahida, even though it
Mm-hmm.
wasn't actually. Like, and we are the only
It
ones that
was
know
a
that.
previous one.
Yes.
Right.
So right now in the story, if you ask anybody in the world of Tevat after finishing the Dendro Archon quest, they'll say that those are the three that have always been there.
So then Raiden Shogun or A, her sister or one of someone before her was the original Electro Archon too, right?
Hmm. But so
That would have to be the
so yeah, so the
case.
sister is the original Archon,
Oh, okay.
I think.
I thought there was like someone way older. It would make sense because I mean I'm pretty sure that is how it went because I remember that in the trailer for Raiden Shogun. Um, so from here on, it kind of splits off. There's like variations of the mythology of this. So that's like kind of like a core common belief between all of the types. But then now you have some other more, I wouldn't say dramatic, but more focused separate ideas.
Mm.
The next one. So this of one version of Gnosticism states that wisdom can go astray, like not the heavenly principle or the God. Like wisdom itself can go astray, and the result can lead to a false God. So lies lead to false gods. Humanity, in a state of spiritual amnesia, before accepting the revelation of the myth, is awakened by reconnection with perfect knowledge. So, if everyone had a gnosis, now everyone can basically collectively rise to the level above archons and maybe even challenge the gods themselves, which is kind of what the harbingers are doing. You know, they are gathering all this firepower. They are going to all the nations, gathering all the gnosis, so that they can directly challenge, you know, or they can, what do they call it? Seize authority from the
Yeah,
gods.
exactly. Yeah.
That's that is a direct belief of Gnosticism. The other one is interesting because it's almost like a prediction of what's going to happen. So, what is this guy's name? Saturnal's myth. So this guy, centuries ago, his version of Gnosticism is that there are 7 world-creating angels. They are created by the transcendent God, but rebel later.
Mm.
So, either that means we befriend all the archons, we get them all on our side, and then we use them to fight the gods.
Oh my god, can you
Which
imagine playing as the
would,
Saritsa?
oh my god, that'd be great. I'm pretty sure she is playable, but here's the thing.
Yeah.
That also means, wouldn't we be siding with the harbingers?
Well, right.
Because
Well,
that's what
I
they want to
mean,
do.
well, think about it, right? Like, if we can win the Saritsa over, then we win the Harbingers over,
And we win
and we
the
win
game.
the game. We win. No, because then we have to fight Celestia, right? So, and the
Oh, but
unnamed
here's the
god.
thing: if there are 2, wait, isn't Celestia the unknown god? Did someone just gave her the name?
No, the unknown god is
The unknown.
like we don't know, right? Like if the
Wait,
like because
hmm?
Celestia is um a place, but also supposedly
Right.
a something like a person or like an entity. Like there's like a Celestia the place and there's Celestia the
Hmm.
entity. It's like what I thought. Hold on, let me see. Celestia is a mysterious location that few people understand. Um, yeah, I don't. I'm trying to remember what was this thing that I remember reading about. Okay, well, as of right now, Celestia is a place, right?
Okay.
But like,
Okay. So there's unknown god and the place called Celestia, not the person.
yeah. So I think. Oh yeah, what it
Okay.
was? This is what it was. The one of the heavenly principles is Celestia. Is what was some was said somewhere or something, and so
Really? Oh, okay. That's a
yeah. Hold on. Oh wait,
principle. All
wait.
right.
Didn't we look at this here? The heavenly principles. Celestia appears to be either established or act in accordance with the heavenly principles. It also translated as destiny or the divine. When the unknown god confronts a traveler and their siblings, she calls herself the sustainer of heavenly principles, and the term heavenly principles is often used as a synonym for Celestia. These heavenly principles also are intricately linked to the truth of this world. Um. Okay. That's it. That's it for now. Okay, so let's just say that.
Okay.
That's all we know.
So the last bit I want to bring up, because this is what kind of leads me to, coming up with like better theory crafting. So another branch of Gnosticism, the world was created from the love of Elohim and Eden. So basically Adam and Eve. So Elohim the guy, Eden the girl. And the first human couple were created as a symbol of that. Ironically, evil was introduced after Elohim learned of the existence of the good above him. So think of it like, Adam and Eve found out that, wait a second, this isn't just, the place on earth. There's actually something up there. So Elohim basically just straight up leaves and Eden, descends, down into the earth, and of course, becomes more, into an evil, almost like a spiteful evil, like a betrayed evil. So this is where you have like the split of like good and evil. Like, um, there's a divine power, and then there's like a dark power. That's the first two original ideas of light and darkness. So now, so far, of all the things we know about it, here's the similarities. In Genshin and Gnosticism, there's 7 archons or angels that are below 2 other supreme divines above them. Okay, and the other similarity is each archon is unique and describes a heavenly attribute. They have a unique personality. They personify something. False knowledge makes false gods, or false power, or dark power, which is delusions. And then you have knowledge that unlocks human potential, like true knowledge, which is visions, which enhances their ability instead of like being degenerate.
Right.
From this, there's some inferences we can make. There is a possibility of there being another god other than the unknown god that we fought. Because, if there were good and evil forces in the very beginning of like everything, we only saw one. There has to be another. Which also then means there may be 2 other elements, light and dark. That kind of gives further, suggestion to like that dark flame incident, right? There is an energy type that is not elemental, but is present in this world to some degree, like the abyss, like the abyss power, because we've also seen that, like abyss darkness actually tries to grab Zhao, and then you have light coming from the top, and then kind of like attacks it and neutralizes it. So there could definitely be at least 2 other elements or powers that could be introduced into the game later on. And also keep in mind that true damage exists in the game already. Like not physical damage, but like instances of true damage that just is straight up damage without interactions.
Right.
And the other inference is that, yes, a lot of people are starting to get it, that there's definitely another world above or outside of ours.
Mm-hmm.
So far as we know, the technology of humanity in Genshin is pretty limited, which we don't have planes. We have gliders, but we don't have weather balloons. No one's gone into the atmosphere. I mean, you can ride a dragon, but that's the farthest up we've ever been. We've never seen space, even though we have astrologers, or what's Mona's trade profession called? Yeah, astrologist.
Yeah.
Even though there's that, no one's been into space, but they have been in different dimensions, different
implied,
domains.
Yeah.
That's
domains,
implied,
yeah.
Right.
The domains, yeah. Domains and stuff are like pocket dimensions, sort of.
Right. So, basically, this is the core of Genshin's story. I'm 100% convinced this is, and then Genshin just cleans it up, refines it, puts their own twist to it.
Yeah.
But
which also means
stand
like,
out to you?
I mean, it just also means that like we can, like you said, like this like prediction engine, like it's something that helps us to be able to predict where the story might be going. But they could also at any given moment, even though this is the base, they could just flip it on its head and turn it into something totally different. So we got to be ready.
Mm-hmm.
But it is interesting to see the parallels in this story, to this idea of Gnosticism, and like I think like I said earlier, like the wording and things that they use specifically for the localization of the English version definitely makes it more and more convincing that like with the 7 archons and the higher power and all this stuff, it's and like this pursuit of knowledge, like it's so interesting to see it, because I thought Genshin was sort of unique in that sense, but this is the base. This looks like the base for this whole lore, and that is so exciting because I don't think I've ever played a game that has used this as a base. If I have, I wasn't aware of it, or maybe didn't realize it, or maybe they didn't follow it as closely as Genshin is following it. So I'm really curious to see how this story goes, and then like I said, how I personally am convinced that this will feed into the larger Honkai universe story later as well. So yeah, I think it's really interesting. I love when companies do this, like they create this shared world between all of their stories, um, because it seems like it's hard to do, but it just gives so much cool context, and it makes it easy to imagine different things. So yeah,
It
cool.
really adds to the depth of the world, which pulls people into it, which makes them more interested in it, which makes them want to play it and devote stuff to it, spend money on it. It's, if anything, it is an incredibly clever tactic for marketing, because it's like it's meta advertising. You create something that has to be talked about or advertises for itself. So like an ad for the game in the game. It keeps you in it. It's just a perpetual cycle of this game makes me want to play this game, which makes me want to play the game. You know? That's why like lore is such a underutilized facet of a lot of games, because a lot of games just focus on gameplay and then they just kind of leave it alone, and there's nothing much to look forward to other than just more of the gameplay, which will get stale eventually. But if you look at it like Genshin, you play the same game, the same style all the time. But it's what you're playing for is what makes it interesting. Like, hey, you're fighting these new guys now, or you have
Yeah.
a new element now, you have a new character now, and that character has a story. Everything keeps you interested. It
Right.
keeps you in the
Everyone has
cycle.
their own motivation, right? Like for how they play, and
Mm-hmm.
which is why Genshin tries to throw so many different kinds of things at you. Like they're coming up with the card game soon, right? Like you like the Genshin
Yep.
characters, now play the card game, and then they have the different characters and all this stuff. And there are still people that play for the combat, but I think Genshin's focus is definitely main focus is not on the combat and is more on the exploration and the experiences within the game. So yeah, I'm just excited for the story too.
Yeah.
Like so
Mm-hmm.
excited for the story.
That was a good study. I like that.
Yeah, thanks for that, Kahi.
Hmm.
So we'll see. Will Genshin uh follow even more closely the concept of Gnosticism? Find out next time on Genshin Guys Pod. So
I was expecting Dragon Ball Z.
I mean that I said it exactly like that, but yes.
Uh-huh.
um
Tune in next week.
what's it called? So special thanks again to Ben at Invoker Mid Please on Twitter for the suggestion. Definitely a parallel that I think most people will not draw, but now hopefully you will be more aware of it. Gnosticism, and that is Gnosticism, as spelled in the title of this episode with a Gnosticism. And yeah, we'd like to hear your thoughts on that as well. Let us know. Tweet at us, join Discord, etc., or my Discord for now. We'll see how it goes. Now, community discussion question. So, like I said in our last week's episode, this week's episode is pre-recorded, so we will not answer last week's question yet, but instead we'll ask a new third question, which is, what is? Oh no, which is this. What are your favorite and least favorite daily commissions? So I'm really curious. Let us know because most of us we get on every day. We do our daily commissions. Sometimes we see, oh man, I have this one today. Or like, oh great, I have this one today. Like this one's fast, or this one's interesting, or this one's fun. Like I'm
I
really
gotta chase
curious.
that thing again.
Oh, I gotta jump on mushrooms. So I have to. Oh my
Yeah,
god,
you know what I'm talking
I
about,
have to.
right?
Yeah, I know you're like the one with the zip lines, right? The Sumeru one. But like, what about the I have to chase the weasel and play the guessing game with the weasel. So yeah, like so these. I mean, a lot of us have probably been doing Sumeru commissions, but for those of you that are maybe not 100% caught up, or you prefer to have your commissions randomized, or you do commissions in a different country because of the maybe you're trying to go after specific materials, etc., or maybe a specific achievement. Yeah, let us know what your favorite and least favorite daily commissions are. I'm always interested to hear. All right, everybody, that wraps up the show, the first interlude show for today. As always, thanks for listening. If you have the time, please leave us a comment and a review. We'd really appreciate it. Don't forget to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you're listening. Follow us on Twitter, once again, at Genshin Guys Pod. Also follow my personal Twitter at JSideGaming and Kahi's at Kahiao, KahiyaO. And as always,
Ad Astra Abyssos.
おしとしを目指せ
Enjoy.